The views expressed on this podcast are that of the host. This topic of UFOs is full of governments, charlatans, thieves, and loads of shit. For your listening enjoyment, put on your tinfoil hat, turn off all the lights in the home, and sit in complete silence because the probe is armed. Don't be scared if you're touched. Lastly, the UFO talk is explicit and your virgin mind is about to get fried. Let's get the show started.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us on the UFO Buster Radio. This is episode 16. Your host, Manny Moonraker and Big O. Now, today is going to be a special day. I am so excited, so stoked. We have special guests on the show, and he's going to give us the 411 on an event coming up. What do you think, Manny?
Well, we're lucky to have today Daniel Jones, and he is going to clue us in on a special event coming out of Aurora, Texas on April the 16th. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Manny. Thanks, guys. I'm honored to be on and for you to take your time to let me share about the event coming up in Aurora. We're really excited to be putting this together. It's called the Aurora Alien Encounter, and for those who aren't really very familiar, which I hope at some point, maybe by the end of the show you are, it's a commemorative event about a historical incident which happened, of course, in 1897, where a metallic cigar-shaped object came flying into Aurora, Texas from the south and crashed into Judge J.S. Proctor's windmill and exploded. And, of course, this sounds pretty incredible, but that's not even the big part. They, after the debris and everything, found remains of a body. And, of course, this is yes, what many people have heard of as the alien that was recovered and then later buried from the remains, were buried in the local cemetery, which is actually where I'm broadcasting out of right now. I am here in the cemetery at the alien grave site in Aurora, Texas. So how about that, guys?
Man, that's so exciting. Can you dig it up? Can we dig it up? I would so want to dig it up. So,
well, it's interesting you mention that because back in the 70s, there was a big effort made to see about exhuming the body, to really kind of put this all to rest. And the city would not have it. They did not want anyone to dig up grandma or anything like that, And so because of that, the groups that were wanting to do this kind of got a little bit upset and threatened to sue the city of Aurora for not letting them exhume, this presumed alien body. So isn't that kind of interesting?
It really is. Now, this case right now is one of those pivotal cases because it's before the internet, it's before Photoshop, it's before YouTube. So this is one of those where it's really critical for us to really research, right?
Well, absolutely. Not only that, it's before any kind of conventional aircraft. This is before the Wright brothers, at least 6 years. And so the interesting thing is that around this time, you have what's referred to as the Great Airship Mystery. And there are a lot of very strange things being cited all over, not just Texas, but all over the state. And so what we have is some form of aerial phenomenon that was very widespread all over the place, and people really took note of it. And I think that it really kind of messed with their psyche because, like you said, it was before the internet. It was before a lot of things that we understand today. And then, people look in the sky and you see an airplane, you see something, you say, okay, well, it's normal. Back then, there was nothing. And so this is an incredibly valuable incident because when it comes to UFOs, sure, it's great to have a sighting of something in the sky, but not only to see it, but to have it crash down is such an incredible thing. But not only that, but to have a body come out of it as well, this is really, I'd say, the smoking gun of most all of ufology in many ways, and not to dismiss anything else. But, this is 50 years before Roswell. So we're really dealing with a pretty significant incident that we're, interestingly enough, working with the city of Aurora to have an official resolution to recognize this as a historical incident. And, of course, if anyone's ever been out to Aurora, Texas, there's not a lot there. You stop by the cemetery, and there is a historical Texas marker where you can read about the spaceship crashing and the pilot being killed. So it's pretty neat that a city in Texas is looking to more or less be encouraged to share about this incident with the community. And, for a long time, it wasn't really something that these people wanted to be known for. They wanted to just keep their little town quiet. Of course, that's why they're out in the city. They wanted to move away from all the noise and everything. But I think it's something that more people now are open to in their understanding and awareness. So I think that it's great that we can finally have this kind of commemorative event. Once again, we're calling it the Alien Aurora Encounter. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. It's the Aurora Alien Encounter. Anyway, but it's going to be on April the 16th, which is a Saturday, so it's coming up pretty soon. And there's a lot of neat features. We have a lot of great special guests coming in. We're going to have a conference with speakers. There's going to be a documentary and a lunch that's catered by the resort that we're going to be holding it in, as well as a shuttle tour to go around to the original crash and burial sites. So we've got a full package deal, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Have you found any type of resistance from the local government or the government trying to say, no, you can't do this or anything like that? Or has everything been easy peasy, green light, get this all together?
Well, that's an interesting question because let's say 5 years, 10 years ago, even more than that, the city, for the most part, really didn't want to have much of an involvement with this. But with the current lineup within the city council, things have really kind of shifted around. We have Dr. Tony Wheeler, who's the city administrator, who is all for the whole alien kind of atmosphere. If you go to the city's website, auroratexas.gov, you'll notice immediately that the whole layout, everything, has an alien theme. And if you actually go there and burst into the city hall, which is actually very small, it's not a large place, but you go in, you have all kinds of little alien memorabilia. There was a movie made about this called the Aurora Encounter back in, I think, the 80s. And there's even who they refer to as their local famous resident, Ned, who, of course, is the one who crashed. And so he's the local alien here. And so it's really interesting because the city is really pretty for it, but that's not always been the case. And some of the locals here, from what I understand, are still kind of a bit stirred up about it. And even though that's kind of always the case in some ways with these kinds of things, I think that as time goes, we'll have less and less resistance to just an open mind when it comes to these types of things because, of course, it's understandable in the 1800s to really be challenged with the idea of space flights and alien people and things going on like that. But when we're dealing with the time that we're living in now, people are a bit more open. Things are so much different than they've ever been. And so we can come to an understanding that I think is not as naive as maybe, some of the old-timers that have held on to their old ways. And not to make any negative remarks about anyone, but I think that it's something that, of course, will cause a little bit of an issue. And if anything, that's kind of an interesting aspect as well. I think that kind of goes all together with the whole vibe of the event is, it's an interesting thing. It's weird. It's sort of mysterious. This all happened, and, I could understand why people might not want to really be associated with that. This is a very conventional area that we live in, and so it's kind of understood that some people just want to keep their own ways and not really change anything. So I get that, but at the same time, I think as time goes, we'll be able to feel more comfortable as a community in dealing with these types of things. And who knows? I think this is going to end up being a pretty big deal in time to come. The city's really going to step it up and make sure that we can continue to have this kind of event for the years to come. So I'm excited about all of that.
I wonder if it gets as big as Roswell. You know how Roswell has an event almost every single year. Next, we're going to have a Aurora event every single year. The thing I want to see most is that not only does it bring an open mind to the people in Aurora, Texas, but also it helps people to come forward and bring out more events that probably happened to them, and they can share it amongst people who not necessarily believe in anything, but are with an open mind.
Yeah, that's it. And, it's the same thing you guys are doing here, all of your listeners. We all think about these things. We study them, we research, we investigate, we like to look into all of these really interesting topics. But when it comes to UFOs, unless you really are interested or hear about it or find out, you're not really going to learn very much. And so, like you're saying, this is going to be a great opportunity for the city to give the community the ability to come, find out more, learn about other ways you can get involved, like come listen to the UFO Buster radio show and find out more by all these different things. And so it'll help the community learn about all that we can when it comes to UFOs, aliens, government, things like that. I think it's all fascinating, and there's a lot to it. And there's so much that people can dig into that'll help their own understanding. But if they don't have the tools, and if it's not accessible, and there's not a community to support it, it really won't happen. So I really commend you guys for putting all of this together and allowing for this kind of platform to be held to where we can voice our opinion on things like UFOs and topics which aren't really too big in mainstream media.
So Daniel, that things like this and events like this really happen because of individuals like you who take the time to put these things together. Now, the event itself has some pretty interesting people involved, such as Travis Walton.
Yeah, we're really excited to have Travis out. He's a really great guy. You think that something like this, you would say, makes someone a certain way, or they might come off as egotistical or something. Travis is such a down-to-earth guy, strange. It's kind of a pun to say, I guess, but it's really great because he's going to be the keynote speaker. For those of you who don't know the name Travis Walton, go watch the movie Fire in the Sky. And that's a movie based off of his experience. He underwent an incredible abduction experience where he and some coworkers were out driving in the woods to their job site, and along the way they saw an enormous glowing object, and Travis jumped out of the truck and ran up to it, and it zapped him, and his friends thought that he was immediately dead, and so they drove off, which, is unfortunate. They left him there. They thought he was dead, but it ended up being that Travis was taken aboard, and some things happened. I won't give it all away, of course, but I think it's a really pretty outstanding case that is one of the world's most well-known, and so I think that it's just such an honor to be able to have Travis out to share his own experience. Of course, we're going to have some other great speakers as well, like Jim Mars. Jim Mars is someone who's been a pioneer in all things paranormal and strange, and so I think that having him is going to really be just such an incredible part of the event. He's going to be premiering a documentary that he's put together about the Aurora crash, so that's going to be a really nice time. We also have other speakers like Nick Redfern, who's going to be speaking on several UFO cases that are well known in Texas. Of course, many of you probably have seen Nick on shows like Ancient Aliens, and he's really a prolific writer and does an amazing job on, of course, all things paranormal as well. We also have Tui Snider, who will be speaking about what I like to refer to as the Texas airship mystery. All these different airships that were sighted not only in Aurora, but all over Texas around the time of the event here in Aurora in 1897. She'll be speaking on those incidences and also how it sort of affected the psyche of the public, how they might have seen these things as like an omen of the end times. So we also have Stephen Andrasko, who is a UFO researcher. He's going to be speaking on Cowboys and Aliens, the real version, not just the movie, but real incidences of UFO encounters of the Wild West all throughout the 1800s. And so this is actually going to be something he's going to be sharing about, which is a work of another author who is a speaker that's going to be here as well, Noe Torres. And Noe is going to be speaking on the Del Rio UFO crash of 1955, where an Army pilot was flying and saw a UFO, a saucer-shaped disc, crashed down by the Texas-Mexico border, just over the Rio Grande, and basically flew his jet down, landed, and went to go find out what it was and looked inside. And we have some great aerial footage that we took earlier this year of that location, exactly where it crashed, and so he's excited to bring that as well. So we just have a fascinating lineup of great speakers to just inform everyone about UFOs and Aurora and Texas mysteries in general. It's going to be very interesting, not to mention the tours that we're going to be offering as well. The city will be arranging tours every half hour throughout the duration of the conference to be able to go to the Aurora crash and burial site where the ship originally crashed and where the alien body was buried within the cemetery as well. And that's going to be guided by City Administrator Dr. Tony Wheeler, who I was mentioning a moment ago. So it's going to be a fascinating day. We're really excited to be putting this together. And, you know, if anyone's interested, if they can't come in person, you can always watch the event live online. We're excited to be able to provide this service to those of you who can't really make it out to, you know, the middle of nowhere out in Aurora, which, you know, actually it's only about 20 to 30 minutes northwest of Fort Worth. So it's not too far for those that within the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but anyone a little bit out of the way, feel free to tune in. And there's information you can get in order to do that at my website, vortexes.net.
So I was going to ask you about that.
Sure.
Okay, so here's my question. One, you have a group called vortexes.com, and how do you... It seems like when you went to these sites, you kind of did it in a scientific manner, kind of like a ufology manner. How will you... It's almost like archaeological site, how you lay everything out, take pictures and everything, like try to be a more scientific way.
It's really important to document a lot of what we're dealing with, not just so we can preserve its historical value, but to be able to share it for people who don't know much about it. And one of the interesting things when it comes to Aurora is the gravestone, the headstone of the gravesite where the alien body was buried, has been taken numerous times. And, you know, it's only because of a few pictures of the original headstone that we even know what it looks like. It's not there anymore, and, you know, there's some ideas about where it is, but it's because we can preserve those types of documents that we know about some of these things. And I think that's kind of how we get anywhere or a lot of places by doing a very intricate analysis and investigation, but at the same time, you know, make it enjoyable, make it accessible to people, you know, make sure that we're not just, I think it's important to allow anyone to learn about it, but make sure that not anyone can just go and mess things up as well. So it's important that we have the right protocols in place, but at the same time, you know, we need people to be more educated in how to do those things. So I'm all for being able to have those kinds of standards in some way, and I think it's what we offer. The network that I've put together, I like to call Vortexes, and the website is vortexes.net. And right now I'm in the process of kind of reconstructing some things, but we also are on Facebook and Meetup and YouTube, things like that. I like to be able to document a lot of these types of events, functions, conferences, so that it's available and the public can have access to them. So, for instance, you'll notice on our channel we have dozens of videos that cover not just things like UFOs, but all sorts of interesting phenomenon, all kinds of areas relating to supernatural, the metaphysical, the spiritual, things like that. And hence why I like to use the term vortexes. We have so many things here that go on that I find incredible, and I think a lot of people do as well, and they kind of see how it connects together in some way. So we like to incorporate that.
So, Daniel, we're going to make sure that we have a link to the Eventbrite site so that people can actually go on and, you know, purchase their tickets and join the event and really take in the Aurora atmosphere as far as what's happening in Aurora, what happened before, and what's happening now. But before we let you go, we kind of want to know a little bit more about you. You know, how did Daniel get into ufology and the UFO events?
Sure. You know, it's always really interesting because I think that with a lot of the information that we have now, it's easy for people to get a hold of. You know, you can watch TV and find out about all these shows and everything, and you go online, watch interviews, and that's all great. But for me, I think personally, having some of the experiences that I've had and making an effort to understand them a little better has driven me to all of these different areas in a greater depth that I don't think I ever would have unless I was prodded to by different experiences of the paranormal or supernatural. And so when it comes to UFOs, people automatically assume aliens. And while that's something we can't rule out, I think that there are many different things that we also have to take into consideration. So when people go through different experiences, as some of the things that I've had happen, I find that if you don't do anything, if you suppress it and don't tell anyone, you're kind of doing yourself and perhaps others a disservice. And, maybe in some ways you're keeping things safe, but I think if you can explore something that has happened to you with more depth, if you find something that you can research, if you look into it, you can really start to understand what's going on a little better. And for myself personally, I started trying to research a lot of what I was experiencing, and through this, I've come across different books, different authors, and I've looked into how can I be actively involved in my own community? What's going on here that will help me feel like I'm not crazy? It's like, what can I do to secure my sanity, so to speak? And I found that there's actually a lot of groups around here that are actively involved in pursuing the unknown and the mysterious. So I thought, I'd like to see what this is about, and I got involved in different groups, and I've met people, and I've done things that I have completely changed my life, and in a good way, of course. But at the same time, I think that it's the initial push of exploring what it is that we're dealing with to help us with a better understanding. And so I've always kind of had a fascination in some weird areas, but to the extent that I've really driven into all of these topics, I think it's probably more than the common person, of course, and I think that I'm okay with that. But really, all of these different areas, UFOs, cryptozoology, the paranormal, spectrology and spirits and entities, or even the metaphysical aspect of the world and spirituality, I think that there is all sort of a linking thread that intertwines all of these different areas, and that to me is what really drives my interest overall, and I think that it helps bring out the best in people when they can find some meaningful insight into their experience and be able to perhaps provide that for others as well. So for myself, I think personal and direct experience lends insight to what we can learn by investigating, by experimenting, by just pushing ourselves to make known, or in an attempt to know a little bit more about what we're dealing with in our own life. Because if we're just completely oblivious to something and we want to ignore it, like I said earlier, I think we're kind of doing ourselves a disservice and tuning out of something which could provide a great deal of value to our lives overall. And so I enjoy all of these different subjects, and I think that if more people were open-minded and more considerate, that we'd find out a lot more about this world than we really know and what meets the eye. We
totally agree with you, Daniel, because one of the things that Big O and I often talk about is that ufology really should be an open community rather than certain individuals, holding on to all the information.
Yeah, I think that it's something that for either certain purposes of military, government, or otherwise, there is a certain standard of recognition that has to be taken to where, only these people, this is exclusive to only this person. And I think that because of that, the quality of some information can be upheld. But if it's never distributed, then it's kind of unfortunate, because this could lend insight to so many aspects of humanity that have been veiled for so long. And I think it is important to unveil a lot of the things that have been kept from us. So I'm doing my part to make sure that we can have access to some things that maybe aren't as accessible or, haven't been in the past.
So, Daniel, you've been very informative, but before we let you go and end this interview, Big O has this question he likes to ask everyone that comes on the show.
Actually, I have two questions, but we're going to do my main question first. So, here's my first question. The first question is, if you had an extraterrestrial right in front of you, facing you, looking at you right now, and you're acting basically as an ambassador for all human race, what would you do? Now, before you answer that, you have to keep in mind that whatever you do could either be eternal peace and great technology or complete Earth destruction. What would you do?
The irony of your question is I actually am standing in front of an alien. Unfortunately, it happens to be a dead one in a grave under the ground, but it's a very good question because I think that a lot of people don't consider that. And I guess you're suggesting, whatever I choose could either be the two extremes of peace or destruction.
Correct.
If I get that correct.
Yep.
So this is something I can ask the alien?
No, well, basically, the alien's looking at you and looking at your behavior, whether your action or what you say. And anything could be taken as a really good positive or a negative. So what would you do? Would you just sit there and not do nothing? Or would you interact? Or would you pass out? Because Manny says he'll pass out. So,
Well,
and me, I would give the Vulcan peace sign because I would consider that the aliens has been getting signals from Earth from way back when, and hope they know that the Vulcan live long and prosper thing will actually mean peace. Hope, but that's my thing.
Very nice. Well, I see what you mean now, and that's very interesting. I think that I would hold space silently, but I would project an intention because I imagine that I probably don't have to use words to communicate if I'm in that proximity with an advanced being. I would presume that they can probably communicate telepathically, and the intention that I would open would be that of compassion and recognition that we are inherently connected, but there is also the recognition that we are of different, not just different planets, things like that, we're of a different existence, but that we exist simultaneously and that we are also interconnected, and that it's kind of like I would imagine a lamb or a gazelle, I guess it would be better, a gazelle looking at a lion right before it eats it, and it says to it, I understand that you have to eat me, and I understand that this is simply a cycle of life, and I hold no regret or remorse for this situation. And I think it would be kind of like that, where I recognize that this being has tremendous power that could easily be used to destroy or help. And I think that through honoring that recognition, there might be the slight chance that it would be reciprocated. So, to put it simply, I think that just simply to be in recognition of conscious awareness of each other, but to understand it as a peaceful gesture, not like, this, I guess I'm dead now or something. I think that
Right.
if
Don't
I
give up hope.
I'm very hopeful, and I think that we have the ability to grow just as these advanced civilizations have done. I think that they're hopeful for us to do that, and so I think that I would look through reflective eyes in a situation where they may have once been, and say or think, admit the energetic thought of we are, essentially that we essentially are one together, and that in recognition of your capability to be as advanced as you are, that also that potential resides within us as well. And I think that there's so many words that we can use, but I think just emitting that type of energy is something that we consciously understand beyond words. And so, not to make it too complicated, but I think just that recognition of the very sort of sacred and mystical understanding would be there. So, yeah.
My second question is, me as a blue-collar, literally I got into this in November of last year, okay? So I don't know much. You know a plethora of information. So to the average Joe, what would you consider, or what would you tell them to help them get started into it in a safe way and not be scared to the point where they think the Earth is going to end tomorrow?
In regard to just UFOs and things like that in general?
Just getting information.
Okay. Well, here's the number one thing that I think a lot of people take for granted. When we go to school, we're told how to think and what to think and things like that. We're not really able to make a lot of decisions for ourselves until later on in life, where we think, I grew up thinking this, or maybe I was raised this, or my heritage is this, so that automatically means that I'm this or that. When we start to really question our own reality, what if this, or what about this, we start to kind of open up the explorative, creative parts of our self. And I think when we tap into that lends so much to getting anywhere. And I think that as far as information, there's so much, I could say go to the internet and all this and YouTube and everything, but I think what's really important is look within yourself. All of these things are inherently inside of you and a part of you already. You would like the information, look within yourself, meditate, find space, to be able to really take the time to concentrate on what it is that you'd like to be able to know more about. And then from there, see what comes up. If you feel like you need to go, look into a book, go to a bookstore, look in the different sections, go online, go to a friend, look who, what kind of groups are in your area. See how you can be actively involved in making an adjustment in your own awareness to improve it in some way. And I think that's where we start with any great invention or creation or ideas, by being active within our own ability.
That is fantastic advice. And again, we have Daniel Jones on the line. The event is the Aurora Alien Encounter, April 16th, out in Aurora, Texas. I guess that's it, Daniel. Do you have any last words for our fans?
I just want to thank you guys so much for letting me come on and say all this stuff. I know it's probably a little bit over time, but I'm honored to be here, and I'm glad that you guys are doing what you're doing. Thanks to all the people tuning in as well, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone out there on next Saturday, April the 16th at the Aurora Alien Encounter. And you can always stay up to date with different events around the area. You just go to vortexas.net, and I'm available anytime for anyone that's like to get together. And I enjoy meeting everyone, and it's just been a great time. So I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
We need to have him back on the show later after the event. I'm just saying, there's so much information.
Yeah, we'll definitely get together and have like a post-event show. I'm thinking pretty sure I'm going to be attending the event, and I'll have some information for the listeners. And maybe we can have Daniel back, and he can give us the behind-the-scenes info.
Well, that sounds great, guys. I really appreciate it, and hope you have a good day.
Thank you, Daniel.
All right, that was awesome.
Well, that was a great interview we just had with Daniel Jones, and all the information for the event on April 16th will be available on the show description. But before we leave this episode, Big O has some information for us.
Big O, it's showtime!
So what's in the ozone, Big O?
So today in the ozone, I was looking up some websites, and what I found on latestUFOsightings.net, it says the best, and I quote, the best UFO videos, March 2016.
Oh, which is this year. This month.
Right?
Well, actually, we're in April.
Technically. But still, early in April. It's only April 3rd. And I'm looking through these videos, and some of these videos are interesting, some of them not so much. Now, one of the videos I wanted to point out, it was on the 6th of March 2016. It said ring-shaped object. It was in Sydney, Australia, and posted on YouTube by UFO to Go 2016. Now, I'm giving him a shout out, but I'm not lie to you, for the first 7 or 6 minutes of this video that I was watching, I thought the guy was an idiot. Straight up idiot. I almost just threw it away. But
so what did he do the first 6 minutes?
For the first 6 minutes, he was showing airplanes, but they were so far in camera view that he was considering them UFOs. But there's something on the airplanes that is very distinctive. They're called collision lights. Now, if you don't know what they are, if you ever look in the sky, you see an airplane, you see the flashing lights on each side of the airplane and maybe on the back and on the tail. And they do that so that way they can see each other at nighttime, or just better visual. Now, usually I believe that on the right wing, it's a strobing light of red, and on the left wing, that's a strobing light of green. Happened way back when they all decided that all these planes, it would be a good idea to have them. And if you look within the first 7 minutes, these planes had those lights. So I'm like, okay, debunked. This guy's an idiot. Whatever. But 7 minutes into the video, they showed this what looked like a liquid metal vortex. And it's just hovering in the sky. And what's interesting about this one is that you can see it move, and you can see it reflect light, and it's just very interesting. I would definitely consider it a UFO. Would I consider it as a extraterrestrial UFO? No. It's just something very out of the ordinary.
So something completely unidentified.
Completely. Now, if it's CG, it's a really good one, you know? And I linked that one, because there's another one, in March 16th on the same webpage. Same thing, ring-shaped UFO in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And what's cool about this one was that you would see a plane flying by, and when you see a plane flying by in high altitude, you see like a vapor cloud from the plane.
Right.
And you'll see it go somewhat close to this UFO, and as the person zooms in, it can almost see like a ring. Now, what's distinct about this and what makes it weird, could it be a weather balloon reflecting the light of the sun? Could be, because it's at different angles you can see like a spot that turns into a ring. So is it debunked? Is it not? Is it something really, really shiny? Don't know. So those things I would like people to take a look at, and just to be the judge for themselves, and then post your opinion on UFOBusterRadio.com. Just saying, plug. Anyway, the other video I want to go over was on March 9th, and this was in Scotland. Cool thing about this video, it reminded me of the event in Arizona.
The Phoenix Lights incident?
Yes! The Phoenix Light incident, the military said they was experimenting with these flares, correct? Correct. Now, these flares were not unlike other flares. They will fall to the ground eventually. Well, in this video, these lights just appeared in the sky, multiple, and then disappeared. They didn't go up, they didn't go down. It was like they were suspended in midair. Now, it wasn't like they were rising up in the sky, lit, and then they disappear. Literally, they will turn on, right? The light will be, a really bright light will be on in midair, and then eventually fall away or just dim out. That I want to investigate a whole lot more too, because it reminds me of the Phoenix incident, and it's one of those things that if we continue to put inklings together from around the world, kind of like make a database, that will be awesome.
And you know what? One of the things that the Phoenix incident movie alluded to was the fact that these things, these similarities, these inklings that happen from cities in the United States actually happening around the world. It's not just in Phoenix that we see those type of UFOs or sightings, but they're happening everywhere.
Especially certain shapes. Like we always hear about cigar shapes UFOs and triangular UFOs. Now, the whole flying saucers and stuff like that, it's kind of like a maybe, maybe not, because that turned into a folklore. People made movies about them. But the triangular shape and the cigar-shaped ones, those I want more inklings on, because those are the ones that you see and you hear about, and there's a huge backstory behind them.
As Big O mentioned earlier, UFOBusterRadio.com is where you can engage with us, and we'll be posting some of this information on there also, as well as in the description of the show, so that while you're listening, you can click on the links and kind of take a look at these videos yourself. Definitely.
Also, I have to make an announcement that we have hit our mark in followers. So, we're going to have to post a blooper reel. What do you think, Manny?
I think it's going to be hilarious because we just experienced a blooper recently. You guys are not going to hear until the blooper reel. However, yes, we are going to post it as a separate, episode. It'll be posted separately during the week. I assume we do have a lot of time to cut through a lot of recorded files. So we will probably post this in about 2 weeks, and we'll label it Blooper Reel 1, because I'm sure we'll have plenty throughout the rest of the shows.
If you guys heard the blooper reel that was on there recently, I'm hoping that the blooper reel that of today's show will be on there. If not, the next one will be hilarious. So I hope you guys stay tuned for the blooper reel part 2, because there's going to be more. And also, please visit us on our UFOBusterRadio.com. Join, spread it. You can even spread it on Pinterest. Hey, spread it. Spread the love. Give it to everybody. Give it to your mom. Give it to your dad. Give it to your dog. Give it to whoever is someone interested and they feel alone. Like me sometimes.
Poor guy.
I know. Pity.
All right, so we want to thank again Daniel Jones for coming out and chatting it up with us. It was a very interesting interview, and again, we'll link up that event for the Aurora, Texas.
And UFO Buster Radio is going to be there. What?
So, Big O, any last words before we close the show?
Oh, yeah, everybody stay cool, stay calm. You know, if you have an event, if you have a situation that you want to talk about that's UFO or extraterrestrial or paranormal related, talk to us. Hell, join us on UFOBuster.com. Put it out there. There's more people. You're not alone.
And in the words of the great Dave in the morning show, ciao.